I'm Bob Boilen with All Songs Considered, NPR Music, and I have missed this entire event because of a music festival in Asheville, which was an amazing, astonishing event called Mountain Oasis, if anybody's ever been to Moog Fest or Mountain Oasis. Just fabulous, fabulous music. I came to the awards ceremony or honors ceremony last night and saw some great music, heard some great music and great people talking. I like coming to this because I learn a lot all the time. This was my year that I missed it. But I know how it feels at the end of a handful of days of listening and taking in information. And I think today what we would like to do as all musicians and so forth is sort of talk somewhere between the needs of musicians but the heart of what it's all about and why they do what they do. And you can see the names, except for the fellow down at the end. We actually don't know who he is, but he kind of looked a little interesting, so we brought him here. And so you're going to be the first to sort of, we'll go really quickly to introduce everybody and what everybody does. You could sing your way through this, or you can simply tell us.
My name is Paul Janeway. I'm a part of an outfit out of Birmingham, Alabama. We do kind of old Stax, Otis Redding, soul type thing, and our first record comes out in February, so I'm really young to this.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Matana Roberts. I'm a saxophonist, self-taught mixed media alternative composer, a writer. I had to write down everything I do. I'm a zinester, a visual artist. I've worked as a side woman, as a saxophonist, as a band leader, as a solo artist, as a street musician. I've put out records on jazz labels, on non-jazz labels, on rock labels, on independent labels, on releases of my own, and I do a lot of different things in the name of sound around my love of American history and American social justice.
My name's Alec, Ounsworth. I have several different projects, one of which is called Clap Your Hands, Say Yeah, and I guess I'm most known for that. And we've released 3 albums independently, and I'm working on the 4th. That's about it.
My name is Dessa. I'm a rapper and a singer from Minneapolis, Minnesota, a writer of creative nonfiction, and I help to run the label Doomtree Records, also in Minnesota.
I'm Nicole Atkins. I'm a songwriter and I have a rock band, and I've put out 2 records, one on a major label, one on an independent, and I'm in the midst of a Pledge Music campaign, and I'm starting my own imprint for my 3rd record through Pledge Music.
And I think what you hear in all of this is that there's a lot of hard work that goes into doing what they do, ground up sort of work. In other words, they are all in many ways both business people and artists and creatives, and some have been around and doing things big label to small, in case of Nicole, and others are small label first records. So it's sort of an exciting thing, and I'm just trying to figure out, like, how you imagine making a living at what you do. I mean, that's almost like the most basic thing. Maybe it's a big question mark. Can you make a living? Do you think you can make a living at what you do, and can it be long term? Because, you know, it's one thing to have a good record that does well, and then it's another thing to maintain. So why don't we start all the way down? Well, anyway, no, Dessa looks like she's bursting. Actually, without the coffee, she's out of the gate.
I feel like I sort of entered the music industry immediately after everything had gotten fucked. And so it was sort of like moving into a house that had just burned down. And there were a lot of warnings about how improbable earning a living in music was. At the same time, you know, this is the only time that I'm alive, so I can't really pick and choose the era in which to become a musician. This is by virtue of being born in the year I was. This is when I got to do it, and I feel like this is a really great time to be making music. It was a slow growth independently, at least it was for me. But for all of the patience that it asked, I got to keep every inch of creative control. And if somebody says, hey, good idea, you should do that in a bikini, I can say, fuck you very much. You know, I'm not interested. And for me, that's a trade that has felt really good. The one that I've been very happy to make is to remain totally at the helm of my own ship, even if it's a very slow sailing ship.
How many years, Dessa, for you?
Yeah,
have you been?
10 years, I think, making music. And those first years also writing pacemaker implantation devices and waitressing at night.
Yeah, take.
To address the question of whether it can be financially viable over time, I had maybe the opposite experience. I released a record in 2005, and independently we sold a lot of copies, and we did very well.
Can you be more specific than a lot?
In the United States, about 200,000, I think.
And this was your label.
Yeah, without the help.
You guys stuffed the records in
Yeah,
sleeves.
the beginning.
Literally,
That's true,
right?
Yeah. I think that was for the first maybe 10,000 or so.
I remember, I think, calling you, and that was happening at the moment I called you.
Yeah, and so it was a pretty heady experience. And, you know, we've done decently since then, but, you know, that was a one-time thing.
And the decently you're talking about is you've put out 2 more records.
2 more records.
Still independent, but
Still
with
independent,
but independent as in other labels. Yeah, or independent. You're not stuffing your own records.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, well, actually, after we had, we started, stuffing our own records, and we then switched. I mean, it happened so fast. One of the guys from the National called me up and asked if we wanted to go on tour with them. And to me, to do a national tour at the time, I was like, oh, people play outside of Philadelphia and New York, and you know, it was a surprise. Like the idea of going on the road, it was that new, and it was also that new that we couldn't conceivably go from one post office to another on the road. Like we actually considered that. Well, how are we going to get our records to people? Mm-hmm. So you know, push came to shove. We had to sign with a distribution company, which is what we did for the next 2 records as well. So
and does that work for you?
Yeah, it has.
We have to
and
get
for
into the
the
nitty-gritty, but just these are, I think, helpful as we march along. The things that actually worked and were helpful is good for all of us to sort of share, and then you'll ask questions.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was helpful. For the 4th, we're probably going to do that as well. But I can understand why some people might want the help of a record label. Most independents, I think, do a great job. I haven't heard too many great stories about the majors, but I don't
Nicole,
have any
you want
direct
to jump in
experience.
at all?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the creative control thing is the major thing with being.
You had how
for
many?
me, anyway.
How many major labels?
I had 2 EPs and an album on a major, and you know, I think I saw the staff change about 4 times while I was there.
What years are we talking here?
Just a few. You
no,
know.
I mean 2000.
Yeah, it was 2007 or 2006 to 2010.
Yeah, that was a lot of shifting.
It was a lot of shifting, and every time I felt like I was getting somewhere with the new staff and getting to know them, and they would be laid off or fired, and then we'd have to start all over again. So, you know, when you're not the freshest signing, after a while you kind of get lost in the shuffle there. But it was funny seeing how it changed, though. I went to an independent label after that. Well, it wasn't an indie label. They had Kids Bop. But so I thought it was a perfect fit, you know, for the psychedelic prog rock I make. But they had a bunch of you know, a good indie roster that I thought, you know, I'd have a good spot in. And then after everybody either left or got laid off again, I saw a lot of trickle down of some of the more evil elements from the majors, you know, come over and join the A&R group there. And then it was the same thing I was dealing with at Columbia, where like, we'll give you money if you make this kind of music and if you write with this type of
People
person.
really they actually said just what you sort of said or hinted at, or?
No, pretty much spot on. They were like, well, you know, we really want you to co-write with Bruno Mars. I think that would be such a good fit, you know, or, you know, go to Nashville and do some co-writes. And, you know, I did it, and it was fun. And I met a lot of really great people and wrote some good songs. But, you know, they hang on to one song that sounds like a hit and then say, cool, now write 20 more of this song. And I just didn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So I was able to get out of my deal. And, you know, luckily through 30 Tigers, they offered me the opportunity to start my own imprint.
And you have a campaign going on.
Yeah, pledge campaign, which is, you know, like you were saying.
Who else has done that on this team? Anyone? Don't know? Okay.
It's wild. It's a lot of work. But it's actually really, really rewarding to see the people that are actually donating money so you can put your record out. Like seeing like their picture, like, oh, Kevin just gave me $20 for my vinyl. And, you know, just having that direct connection makes you, sometimes you forget about what success is, you know, or like when you don't see things being done like in such a direct way, or meet your fans or see who's putting the money into you doing your art, like you can lose, you know, you can lose your sense of reality on what success is. And like doing this pledge thing, like every day just checking the little, you know, the emails and seeing what's coming in and being donated makes me feel like, even though this is on such a smaller level than what I started with, it feels a lot more rewarding.
Mm-hmm. I go to an awful lot of shows, and one of my favorite moments, which really didn't happen long ago, that happens now, is that musicians will come out when the show is over, and they'll stand with their merch table. And it's not necessarily just to stand with the merch. It's like you just meet these people, and these incredible encounters and exchanges that go on. We go back a little bit to the first question, but I'm just thinking about that. Has that happened to you? You all find that valuable? Because it really goes to what you're saying, Nicole, which is the connecting point.
Yeah, that connection. I mean, I try to do that every night unless my voice is killing me.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel terrible. I'm guilty.
A small fan base is really powerful. And so for most of the music that I make, like my #1 fan base is not in this country, it's in Germany and France. And I've worked mostly with international labels and not with American labels. So it puts a whole other shade on the possibility of what you can do and what you can accomplish and how you can connect with people. And usually when I tour in Europe, you know, after the shows, I'm there also to hang out with the people, because at those shows, more than my shows in New York City where I live, the shows are packed with people who just want to see, you know, this American music or this American musician, and they come out and they see and they hang out. And the least you can do after that show is, you know, be there, hang out with people. The funnest thing to do is hang out with little kids that sometimes, every now and then, if it's like an afternoon show, like I did a show in Portugal, in Porto, where it was an afternoon show, and, you know, people brought their children, and it's always fun when kids come up to you and they think you're Santa Claus, you know? They think you know every language, and they start talking to you, so you play along for a while. And then once they figure out that you don't know anything at all, they get angry. It's the cutest thing I've ever seen. I just went off on a tangent.
Looks like Paul has a...
I'm still really young to this business. I don't know much about it. Like I said, we're releasing our first full-length record in February, so I'm a real big baby when it comes to this stuff. But someone told me, they said, to make a living at this, they said, you sell your first record and people, you know, you kind of get this buzz or whatever. And they said, once you sell your first record, you know, they're not a fan anymore. But they said, if you can get 1,000 fans, that it doesn't matter if you limited vinyl, it doesn't matter if you're selling Kleenex boxes, as long as they'll buy it. They said, you can make a pretty decent living at this. But I mean, what band lasts 40 years? How big is your band, by the way? 7 members.
So, I mean, that's another thing that happens, that the idea of being either solo or being a large band, and I don't even understand the economics of that. Like, I mean, who did I just see on the road? Josh Tillman, Father John Misty, and he's out on the road on his own, and it's a fabulous, fun show. Has anybody seen his solo show? Does anybody see?
Great show.
Right. What's that?
It's a great show.
It is an amazing show, and one part of me said, wow, Josh is probably a lot more happy because he's going to probably take a lot more money. It's just him and his guitar. He's got a prop that's like a big iPhone, and that's the show, you know. He stands behind there and tells people to take his picture. So it's an irony moment, you know. It's just a moment of irony. There's a lot of moments of irony in his shows. But what are the economics of, like, paying all the people and the sleeping, and I mean, a
It's
lot of
so
people, I guess,
stressful.
along the road sleeping. I mean, I put up musicians and so forth. So, hey, when you come to town, I got spare room for your 7 band members. But how do you do that?
I really don't know, to be honest.
Then somebody help him. Tell him how he does
Well,
it.
I mean, to me, the way that we've worked and the way that we've always kind of looked at it is as a unit. You know, we have horn players and we have keys players, but when we wrote the songs and we started this, it was a real communicative situation. And it was just a muddy water. There's just too many muddy water to be like, oh no, this is my song,
Right.
you know. And so what we decided, I mean, we just, like I said, we just hit the road and hit the road hard and just play and try to impress people or whatever. And I mean, but yeah, it's worked out for us so far.
Anybody have suggestions in helping him when
Please.
they start going on the road? What are some things that make this all work better? How do you get the network going? How do you when you get
Social-
back to a city, how does that work?
Social media is really powerful for that right now for a lot of us, I think.
And more specifically,
More
what
specifically, so like I know someone who would, when he would get to a town, he would tweet, "I need a place to stay." It's just as simple as that to his 1,000 fans. Like he would show up in a town and have no place to stay. And I've had to do that on occasion. I have not had to do that as much as other people, but it's surprising the networks that can now be set up on your own to look out for yourself, because oftentimes people involved on the more industry side don't have as much time to look out for you as you might be able to look out for yourself. So that's one thing I would add.
I agree with that. The idea of, I mean, even at any level, like to ask your fans for a place to stay. I mean,
It's rough, but yeah.
no, it can be kind of great.
I was
Like
gonna say,
I try to make the effort to go out at festivals to say hi to people after we play. It depends on what kind of show it is, but I'd love to go to the merch table, and take pictures with everybody.
What's the
It's
best
sometimes
breakfast
a
someone's
little-
ever made you?
What's that?
What's the best breakfast a fan has ever made you?
Best breakfast? I've gotten baked goods at shows often.
Yeah.
I do actually. Yeah,
Do you not eat them?
do.
Oh no! Don't make Nicole bake goods. Give them to Dessa.
But I mean, if people are hospitable and it's and for me, like we were talking about this last night. It's sort of a change of subject, but not really.
Go for it.
Lou Reed had such a great impact on somebody like me. To have, I never had any direct interaction with him, but to be able to encounter somebody like that for me, and which for whether it is true or not, to a lot of these people, I am such a figure, and
Right.
everybody here is as well, like to varying degrees, and like to have that sort of direct interaction. I think it's kind of what it's all about. For me, it was what it was all about. Like that, getting close to that and knowing somebody understood me in a way that other people didn't seem to be able to kind of convey that personally. I don't know. That's the idea, really.
I have 7 members in my rap crew too, so on a very like basic level. Do you have any women in your band at all?
Actually, no.
Okay, you gotta fix that. No, I'm kidding. But like,
We're a bunch of nerdy guys.
but like if it's like,
How
I know
does
it can be
is
harder.
that going to be a help here?
Well, sometimes like when
Well, no, we have a lady tour manager.
okay.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so like when I book hotels, I used to book Priceline,
Yeah.
but they've gotten underbid. I would never book on Priceline for a hotel anymore. I always do, because they changed their fee structure, and so now they're like between 15 and 25% more expensive than like hotels.com or Hotwire. And when you book the room, if you go and send the woman in, I'll like I bring like a wedding ring. And I'll just say I'm traveling with some colleagues and he's not my husband, so if I could get a rollaway, please. And a lot of times in the South, where they're like really interested in propriety, they won't charge you then for the rollaways, if you want to get
This is
confirmed.
good, right?
And
Take that with you. Remember this.
and then also like when the guarantees are just so hard to get, they can cover 7 people,
Right.
obviously.
Right.
So if you do tweet out like what your favorite foods are, if they're cheap, a lot of times people will just bring that and you can save some money on food, on meals. And then also if your merch game is tight, then you can supplement, the guarantee. So like t-shirts, okay, like I certainly haven't figured it out. I'm looking, but like we tried flasks and those worked a lot better,
Yeah.
you know, and the markups are really good on those. We also tried like when we would do museums and stuff, you know, we did like magnetic literary poetry, you know, so you're kind of catering to like what the attendees might want. But for us, I think I've got a really, I'm horrible in the South. I have a really hard time drawing there. So I'm gonna talk to you later.
Yeah, well.
But for us, I think we rely a lot on the merch game because we know that we're not gonna win it on the door deal at the end of the night. Yeah.
Can we talk about the door deal a little? Is this okay? This kind of question? Okay. So what does a guarantee these days for, let's say, would you be specific, Dessa, and say, what a club?
Yep, Doug, I know you're my manager and you're watching. Turn it off. So out of town, like I'll get a door deal, meaning they don't trust me to bring, like if I'm in the South, they won't trust me to bring anybody. So I'm a risky investment. So they'll say, okay, well, we'll split the door with you. Usually I get between 60% of the door, and if I'm lucky, 80% of the door. Sometimes that's gross, sometimes that's net, which is to say, hey, Des, we gotta bring in 2 bouncers, we gotta bring in the sound guy, so we'll start splitting after that's been recouped. If I were to get a killer guarantee out of town, I'd probably draw $3K. If I were to get a killer guarantee in the town or in the region in which I live, it'd be higher than that by a factor of, I'd say, 2 to 6.
No. Anybody else speak to that? Because it's different worlds.
Yeah,
here.
it's different worlds.
Yeah,
I mean, I do a mix of things. So I play venues that are door deals, but I also get to play my music in countries that the art is highly subsidized. Like I'm going to Brazil in a couple weeks. And
How does that work? Did the government, who invited you that you wound up with getting subsidies?
So I was invited by a label that puts on shows that's able to get really nice funding from the Brazilian government to bring me.
Just like America.
It's amazing. So I get like a mix of that, or you know, one of my records was put out on a British label, and UK is a bit strange, but some things are subsidized that way. So I do a mix between like festivals that are subsidized, venues that are subsidized, and then the door gigs within there.
Wait a minute, a bar is subsidized to put on music?
Oh yeah.
How do I
Oh
not
yeah.
know
I
this?
mean, I'm trying to think where the last place, maybe like Switzerland or yeah. I mean, it's a crazy balance, and it turns.
Can you guys start to lobby for that to happen here?
Yeah, we really, yeah. I mean, I know European bands that have been able to come and tour the States because, like Denmark, like a band from Denmark that was able to come and tour the States because their country was subsidizing most of the tours, so they didn't really have to worry about the door split. Because the problem with the door split, and this happens to me in the States and it happens in Europe too, you gotta watch that.
Yeah.
How do you watch it?
I mean, it depends. Like, I don't have a manager. I do most of my own booking and most of my own managing, but I network through agents in Europe on occasion, and I network through people. My music is so strange that a lot of people don't know what to do with me and how to represent me, so I have to represent myself, which I don't have a problem doing, but that means you really have to be careful, like when they tell you what the split is, okay, this is really the split, like my math game has gone.
So when you look out in the crowd and you see there are 112 people there or whatever,
Yeah.
and do you in your head say, oh man, the cover was $20, so if there's 100 people
I had
there,
to do
I
that
should get-"
recently for my CD release in New York City,
And
where
then
I
do
live.
you ever have to go to the person and say, they were
Yeah,
just,
I had
that
to
doesn't
do that.
seem right.
I had to do that. And you have to understand, I mean, being from New York City, sometimes we get a little bit too hard-edged with that. It's every time I leave New York City to go other places, I have to tell myself to tone it down. Because we get just we're multitasking so much that sometimes it can come across as wrong. So you have to learn how to come to people in a way that is kind, because most of the people putting on types of things that I do, they really love the music to be able to do it, you know what I'm saying? They're not just doing it because it's something to do. They really believe in you and what you're doing, so you have to be really careful how you approach, because sometimes the mistakes are just honest mistakes that they don't even realize that they made because they count it wrong. And then when you're dealing with differences in currency, let me tell you, you gotta be really careful. Yeah.
Yeah, go.
I was going to say, the thing with door deals, though, they're bullshit.
How do you mean?
I'm from the Jersey Shore, and there's, I'm not going to name any names of venues, But there's a big pay-to-play thing that they do on younger bands that was done to me growing up up until I put out my first record. And then they were all like, oh, remember how we supported you? And I'm like, yeah, you made my dad buy 40 tickets in order for me to be able to play.
So
and
talk about what pay-to-play is so people understand that.
Pay-to-play is like where, they'll say that, there's a viable music scene in this town and we support young bands, and then there will be these people that want to make money off of these young kids' bands, and they'll be like, oh, you could play the legendary Stone Pony. All you have to do is, and they'll have like a battle of the bands for these high school kids, and the winners are the people that sold the most tickets. So it's not growing a community or supporting a really talented band. And there's this group of, they're 17 years old now, but they were 14 when they first started going to my shows, and it's a girl group band. And I'm producing them now, and it's my first production gig. And Sherry Curry's playing in town.
Cool.
And they should be the band that opens for her. They like worship her. And so they got the gig, and then they were told that they can't confirm their time slot unless they could sell 40 tickets. And so I'm like, fuck this. And I just call up and I say, I'm their manager now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not.
So they could buy the 40 tickets, or 40 tickets have to be sold. So they don't
Basically,
necessarily have to pay, but
these promoters are counting on
that's what's inferred.
These young local openers to pay the house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's just, I find it very, very shady. It's a common thing to be done, but it's shady, and I feel like, especially in places like Asbury Park, where it's like such a, if you really want to build community and a rock and roll community, you support the younger bands. As a venue, I think it's, your responsibility to support bands that actually have talent, and so they can find their footing and their ground and then flourish in the world, and then you can lay claim to helping them with their success.
In the days when I was in bands, late 70s, early 80s, here in DC, 930 Club, the way it worked was that as a local band, you would open for the national band. Mm-hmm. And that was so important. And that has sort of over time vanished as bands go on the road together, deals are made. And there's an advantage to that in some ways, because you get to see, as a fan, you get to see a lot of bands come through that may not have been able to do that. So they're riding the coattails of a better band, and often there's a connection between, so it's not just some random difference. But for a local scene, that was good. For a local scene, it doesn't do a lot for the local scene, and it meant so much for me. Our very first show at the 930 Club was, we were the very first band to step on that stage. Tiny Desk Unit was a band, and I played with, John Lurie was on the same stage, like this hero sax player of mine, and Pere Ubu and all these people, and it was really important for us to like find our way, and I'm really sorry that that doesn't happen anymore. But then again, you get out there, maybe all of you have toured with a national act. I think you said you toured with The National, right, Alec? And to talk about a national act, and they and that was helpful to you. Yeah, so and it's a mixed bag.
We've also had local openers when, for various reasons, we just either have been given suggestions as to who might open, and I don't know, sometimes I didn't particularly care for the suggestions that were made, and so we would go around and we just have local openers. So to me, it was usually better anyway, because I figured we were connecting with the local community. But I wonder why this has changed. I didn't realize that it was, in fact, like a staple of the old way of doing things.
Totally. It vanished. Maybe someone could correct me here, but I'm going to say late 80s, early 90s, that all changed, and maybe someone has a. Maybe, is there any club people here? Sooner. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
It still happens a lot, though.
It still happens. In a small, yeah. I think it's one of the most important things you can do too, as a visiting act. Though I mean, I have put some borderlines on that. As an African-American identified looking person, like I'm all these different things, right? But when people see me, sometimes they want to always put me with like the local experimental rapper, for instance. I get really offended at things like that. But sometimes you have to go, okay, but I want to support the local scene.
Yeah.
So, you know, whatever that means. And sometimes that means really messed up bills.
Is there any way for you all, we talk about social media, and we always talk about social media as the reach out to the community, reach out, tell people you're coming to town, doing all that stuff, but is there any part of the social community that says to you, don't play that club, or this club, you know what I mean? Is there any sort of circuit for you all that helps you know, I shouldn't play there, or be careful of this, or, you know, the pitfalls of the places you go? Does that exist?
I think it's just word of mouth mostly, right?
Or having, you know, the experience.
Or doing
Yeah, doing it
getting burned
yourself.
once and not
Like
going
there's
back.
one club that I won't name again, that every time we played there twice and our window got smashed. And so the third time I'm like, we're not playing there.
Seems like it would be advantageous for there to be some sort of space that, you know, if you were about to go into Asbury Park, you would know not to go to that unnamed club.
That's a good idea. I've been meaning to do that with arts residencies. I've done a lot of those. I feel like there should be like rateyourresidency.com. Because it's seriously, because sometimes what shows up on the art residency website looks awesome, and then you get there and like, oh no, this is worse than my New York existence. Like I can't. So yeah, but that's a great idea.
I'm trying to think of like what it is. If a fan could do the most for you, what would that thing be? You know, like if I really just
Beyond baked goods.
Beyond baked goods, yes. By the way,
That could be
I
the
walked
name
in
of
and
the
got
article.
a curry.
Beyond baked
Who's
goods.
the gentleman who gave me the curry? Stand up and.
Yeah, who is that?
But
Is
with
there more?
download, you get curry, which I thought was pretty interesting. It smells great.
He's
Yeah,
long
he's
gone.
gone.
I'd be careful.
It's not really curry. Yes, but what would you want a fan to do to the ultimate thing that a fan can do to you?
I think that as small as it sounds, like spirited advocacy means a lot. You know, hearing from a friend, "Hey, dude, I think you might like this," means so much more than so much press. You know, unless you're getting it from a really, really exceptionally respected source. So I've thought a lot in our label, and I don't know how to do it yet, but to really like incentivize and explicitly ask for that and make it easy for people to say, hey, I think you might like her stuff. Here's a page, maybe a landing page that has like a representative few videos and a couple free downloads or something, but to really ask that people take the time, you know, God, do I know anybody who might like her stuff? I think I do. And then to share that. So I'm not sure.
So what would you do? Would you, like, you're coming into town, you're driving to Cleveland, and you're going to play, would you?
Oh, sure. I mean, so like I said, I
like
haven't figured out a great way to scale this, but even
Yeah.
if I see somebody, you know, we're visiting 3 cities we haven't visited before on this tour. That's exciting. It's also, it makes me apprehensive because I don't know how likely it turn out, you know. I don't know who's coming. So I saw a fan respond saying, hey, I'm so glad you're coming to Jacksonville. And even just to, you know, to tweet back to her, man, thank you so much. Do you mind spreading the word, you know, and providing her a couple links? And usually, no, of course I don't mind. But I think it's easy to imagine that that wouldn't help for someone who's touring and looks fancy online, that you don't realize sometimes how humble a gesture is that can be exceptionally useful. Like, I don't know anybody in Jacksonville, dude. You know only people in Jacksonville. It'd be really helpful if you could let some of them know.
What's actually been really helpful for us, I mean, we don't have a PR campaign or anything. It's been pure word of mouth, social media, which has been fantastic. We have a pretty big following in the South, you know, in Birmingham and you know, Atlanta and Georgia and all those places. So what happens is, you know, a lot of those people want to get the hell out of the South, so they'll move to New York or they'll move to Philadelphia.
So you spread your fan base
Yeah.
through
So
disgust.
actually, what's really bizarre is that I'll get, oh yeah, I'm from Alabama, and we'll have. I mean, it's been really bizarre, and I feel like we're a very spoiled band because we showed up to towns that nobody's heard. I mean, you know, we've never played, and there'll be 100, 150, 200 people there. And that's just, it's kind of ridiculous. But that's what kind of has happened. We've had a very strong local influence, and then those people have just been, I mean, they're just warriors and just screaming from the rooftops, oh,
That's
you got
awesome.
to see this band.
I know what happens when folks either play a Tiny Desk concert or I put a song on the show, and I know how grateful bands are for things like that. What are some of those other things that, like, okay, so those are the small things you were saying, Dessa, you know, it's really one at a time. It's really, truly grassroots. What are some of the things that are reachable, achievable to get your music out there that does spread the word rather in a bigger way so that you see it when you get from town to town? Let the secrets out.
I hate to suck up, but NPR. I'm serious. And Powers put us as the album to watch.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, it was like night and day. It's like I can tell you a difference between when that happened and when it didn't. And it's just, like I said, I'm not sucking up, but that's.
Very cool.
It's one of the very few things that I've noticed is a needle mover.
Absolutely. Like, I feel like anytime you get major NPR coverage, like, you can tell because of your text messages, just ding, 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 like, something good is happening. It's an NPR thing. I can feel it,
Yeah.
But I would say, like, that we were talking a little bit before coming out about the importance of having, like, a team with a varied skill set. Somebody who's pretty good at graphics, somebody who maybe is good at video. I think partnering, even if you're just beginning, partnering with somebody who's just beginning in film, almost every city has a film program of some sort. And sending even a cold message out to say, hey, I bet for your student films you could use some music. You can use mine in exchange for music video. And even just to be able then, when you've got your tour booked, to then send out that piece of substantiating media, right? So that when somebody's looking on the calendar, they say, oh, cool, he's got a video. This guy must be kind of pro. It's so much easier to click play than it is to want to read through 4 paragraphs of the bio that you slaved over. So I think compelling media is an easy way to scale up.
Does it work better to do video over a SoundCloud, or does it not? Yeah.
In my experience.
I think it depends. I think one of the interesting things you were asking what fans could do, one of the things that really helped me is that when people document my shows, they tell me, and they tell me where I might be able to find like a link, where then I can, oh, hey, check this out. This is the show. There was a time in music where we used to actually, in some bands, I was in like demand the tape. You know what I'm saying? Like, you cannot do that anymore. Don't even do that anymore because you want.
Jazz is a whole different world in that department than other musics. They're very much more, they hold close to their chest.
Well, because there's such a whole history of jazz musicians being overexploited. Yeah, I know jazz musicians in their 70s and 80s, living way below the poverty level while their music is being sold and documented and repackaged over and over again by different, industry people in Europe and in other places. So I personally don't really play on that tradition in that way because I weave in and out of so many different worlds. So I like people to document now, but the number one thing they can do is just tell me. So because I'm all over social media, I think social media, as much of a time suck as it is for someone like me on occasion, it's one of the most powerful things of getting your message out there with your work, what's most important that you want your fans to know. It's a great way to connect with people internationally. So for people to give you access to that, it's so powerful.
And when you do this social media, are you in your own voice, or are you, the band is playing at so-and-so tonight, is it, have any of you found better strategies that seem to?
I mean, there are different ways, because I've also I had a stalker for a little while. That's a whole, have we all had this? Yeah. So sometimes, like.
Poor Alec. Alec, I'll follow you, buddy.
I actually used to stalk Alec for
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think as an artist, you also have to understand just because someone's getting a little over aggressive, it's still positive. And they're really far away. So my last really aggressive person was in Minneapolis. Yeah, and it was cool for a minute, and then it just got really out there because he could have like this constant access to me.
Right.
And I pulled back on social media because of that. And you can't do that. So I think it's important. From other musicians I've talked to, they said, speaking in your own voice is really important. People these days want to have that connection. But I think you also have to be careful because then it can turn into this whole kind of brand marketing thing that I personally don't want to have anything to do with. I don't know.
Okay. I'm not sure.
No, I'm just saying you have to be careful You
if it's not personal, then it turns
no,
into no.
You just have to think about how much you want to put out there, about what you want people to know.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, look at Instagram, for instance. Like, I can go through a whole series of musicians I know. Some of us post photos of our food. Okay, cool. Some of us post too many photos of ourselves, as if to say, oh, it's not about the music, it's about, you know, this. And I've done some of that too. Some of us post things that just don't really have anything to do with the message of our work. And I think when you go beyond that, I think that's when you're actually jumping into a world of trying to create brand marketing, which for me, it's not what I'm going for. Maybe I'd make a lot more money if I did.
Like you're branding yourself instead of the music.
Like you're a lifestyle. You're not. It's because my work is about history, right? And some of my current work is about African American history. I know a lot about slavery. I know a lot about auctioning, right? So for me, every time I have to think about how I'm putting myself out there, I also think about, okay, that's kind of auction block-like to me.
Do you mean just by crossing that line of like saying too much about?
Yeah, I mean but it's so.
I think I understand that.
Yeah, we're all having such a rough time with that right now, though, right? Because there's so much information coming at us so much, and we've got to push it out. We all are struggling with this. I definitely.
But go on.
No, I am too. I was just gonna say, like, I'm a relative dinosaur as far as social media is concerned, and. To me, I think that one of the ways to sort of get past that for me personally, I try to pay attention to everybody online. You know, even my friends and bands. I try, Broken Social Scenes, Walkman. They're doing something. They're coming, whatever. And I go so far, but usually I can only pay attention to so much. I mean, I have other things going on. For me, the message is the album finally. And I think that, to me, just, I don't know, the support that fans can give. Yeah, I believe that in moving forward, I understand, you know, the importance and the strength of social media marketing in that way. But I still think that the message is as simple as that. I mean, it's finally.
Yeah, but I think that there is people want to make one, because they can. You couldn't do this before when all you had was, you know, Rolling Stone or New Musical Express or Melody Maker or something like that. But people can connect more to the artists and get an insight on what they're doing. Of course, it depends on the kind of musician, but with I think everybody on this panel, it is the kind of stuff that is interesting in some ways. And
I agree, but at what point do you stop being almost? I mean. Unintentionally, at what point do you sort of stop being just the person that you are and become the brand by virtue of just kind of going at people like that?
I mean, I know some musicians who think like that. I had a discussion once with a New York musician I actually really respected, who turned to me one night at a bar and said, you know, we're both really marketable. It's like, well, that's not why I ever wanted to make music, was this idea of being marketable. But I think a common word that's great, and I think everyone here on this panel is talking about, is the idea of generative in terms of how you use social media. And so if you're using it in a way to spread ideas about your work and also spread ideas that you believe in that are that's the cornerstone of what you're doing, that's powerful. And also it gives us as artists, I thank God that I have some of the tools I have to respond to critique, to things that just are wrong, that people get wrong. Right. It's powerful for that, but you can also micromanage that a little.
I want to get to one more thing, because we probably should open up to questions if I'm not mistaken. But I'm just trying to think if there was, like, the most broken thing of the system that you're in. In other words, getting your record out, recording your record, any of that. What's the thing that's most broken, and how would you fix it? You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay, I have no idea. No, But seriously, I mean, is it like that whole thing? You wind up at a club and you get ripped off, and boy, it would be really nice to have a solution to that. And whatever. But what's the thing that gets you, like, so frustrates you, because it shouldn't be that way?
I don't know if this is the most broken thing, but I think one of the most important things that, you know, every artist tries to do when you put out an album is to have everything line up, you know, together. So it's not like you're releasing, you know, you don't take a year making a record and then just release it into a vacuum with little drops of like, here's a little bit of press and here is a video that came out 6 months after your single. It's really, you know, trying to really knock it out of the park with timing. I think is what I'm most concerned with now for this, because in the past, you know, that was out of my control with other people at labels getting fired or laid off, and now it's just me. So if it gets messed up, it's on me.
So what are the three
You know.
things that you would want to have done? When your record's done, you want to have what done and what done and what done? I mean,
You know, I mean, ideally, you want to have good press coverage, radio to like your song, and for, you know, your artwork not to be stapled backwards the day your record's supposed to come out.
And,
So,
and is radio important to anybody or everybody here? I mean, radio
It is to
unimportant?
me.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, it depends.
You're okay to say this to me. I take no
Yeah.
offense.
Well,
I'm on the web.
college radio, public radio,
college radio
Yeah,
and NPR.
college radio.
I mean,
commercial
and
radio.
And you all
I still
know
listen to the
the
radio.
college radio stations and some of the DJs and
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
even for shows too, what we were saying about
interesting.
going and playing a town where you've never been, those radio stations,
Yeah, they'll
like
get
those
the
were
people.
the biggest reason that I started getting to know fans in places I've never been to, or because of, you know, the AAA stations that were supportive. So.
Anybody else on the idea of like what's kind of screwed up and you'd love to fix?
I don't have a vision for how to fix it, but I think my primary frustration would be the difficulty in circumventing unsavory bed partners. It seems like
Do you say bed partners?
I did, but I was doing it metaphorically, my guy.
I see. It's been a long day.
I think that like my biggest constant daily, monthly, yearly challenge is like exposure. You know, I can't make somebody like the song, but I feel like I've got a pretty good batting average for when listeners give it a go. A fair enough number of them go, yeah, cool, okay, I'll take a record or I'll go to a show. So my biggest objective is exposure, and it seems like some of the biggest and easiest outlets to exposure involve working with brands that I don't know enough about to really want to partner with, and I'm not sure that I can co-sign on their values, and I'm sure that they're not interested in co-signing on mine because they have a deep and abiding interest in the music that I make. They want to sell more soda pop. So yeah, I feel like right now, although I like the idea of music being so accessible online, monetizing, I know we talked a lot about it already, is a big challenge. And to me, it feels like if consumers have stopped paying for music, then musicians very often make lasting partnerships with really big brands. And if you can find one you believe in, more power to you. But if you can't find one that you believe in, then we've really potentially silenced an important voice of dissent, which is that people are going to stop. You can't be mad at musicians for only making jingles if you don't buy their music because they're working for brands.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting that she brings that up, because in the past couple months, so I just did something for the Clinton Global Initiative, which was difficult for me to do because I was supposed to attend a protest. Instead, so that there's that, and then I did something for the Red Bull Music Academy that came through New York and just like
They do an interesting
blew it up.
festival, though. It is a real like tear, you know.
It was really interesting, but I grew up in a really poor Chicago neighborhood, and I got to see what things like Red Bull did to the community, right? And so why would I want to go and partner? But look at what they're doing. It's amazing what they're doing, and they treated all the musicians really respectfully. I made more money in 10 minutes than I ever have in quite some time.
Wow.
And you're like, okay. And you have to kind of think of it like that uncle that you don't like, but he's still your uncle. You know what I'm saying? And you can't separate the bloodline, and you know there's some good things about him. And all these festivals I was talking about, a lot of them are corporate funded. I know that they are, and I don't want to know. Or foundation grants that I've gotten, I know they're corporate funded. You know, I think you have to look at each situation individually, but it is difficult.
Take questions. We do that. Is there a place? Oh yeah, I see microphones. So
Where'd the microphones come
that's a march.
from?
And thank you.
Just wanted to state, you were talking about the venues. The AFM does have a website called venuology.com. Where you
Say the
can-
name again.
Venuology.com. songwriter.com.
That's what you said.
It's underutilized, but you know, this is a chance to fire it up and get it really rolling.
Cool.
But it's exactly designed for what you talked about.
Wow.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Knew there had to be a way.
Go ahead.
Hi.
Oh.
Um,
I saw that in March. I didn't see this March.
I also want to thank you because you were like an amazing moderator.
That's sweet. Thanks.
I had a question about, I'm a singer and songwriter, and I'm based in Washington, D.C., but I'm trying to, you know, branch out into other markets, including New York City, Philadelphia, Boston. And so I was just wondering, because I don't have a manager or a PR person or a booking agent, and I was wondering if you had any advice for how to contact different venues or, you know, agents booking people in these different cities, and how do you approach them if you really don't have a draw, but you really want that exposure?
So you're based in DC?
Yes.
So you're in a good spot for doing stuff like that. So you have like, from here, you have Baltimore, Philly, Asbury Park, New York City. I'm
So
putting
is-
Asbury in there because it's a really great music
But
stop.
except for
and
one
there's-
club that she won't mention.
It's not even in Asbury,
Oh, good.
so it's next door.
We're getting
It's
closer.
in a different town.
But
But,
is it that she would need here to establish herself well, so that if she wants to go to Baltimore and she says her name,
No.
they know her, or
I
to
think
help?
I think that you should, you know, play as many gigs here locally as you can, especially being a singer-songwriter. Hit the open mics. Like the open mics were how I did it.
Is that
And-
still true, folks? With open mics
Oh
still?
yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, I
know,
think-
there's
I can attest to that being
Okay.
there's the
Association of Washington.
there's the
And also network with your local songwriting community.
Yeah.
You just go to like songwriting circles in people's homes, and there are people that attend, and it's a great way to just meet people, and they'll say, oh, we love you, so-and-so, and they'll become your friends, and they will come to your shows.
exactly. You know, that's if you start doing open mics, that's how you meet other singers that will become your friends and go to your shows. And I'm saying, like, even if you took, you know, a couple weeks that you have off or something, and hit an open mic in Philly, hit an open mic in Asbury,
That's a great
hit the Sidewalk Cafe in the East Village in New York. I mean, that's what I did when I first started, and you know, my friends at those open mics were Regina Spektor and Langhorne Slim, and nobody knew who any of us were. And
Could she walk into, during the day, walk in, and being in Philly, walk into a club? Would it be wise to walk into a club and introduce herself? I mean,
Yeah.
do we
Yeah,
get as specific
yeah.
as that?
you know, just
'Cause-
showing up and making
Yeah.
yourself
Yeah.
known,
Yeah.
like let people get to know you, even though it's, you know, scary and awkward. You know, let people know what you do. Like carry around your demos in your bag.
Yeah.
Shameless.
Yeah, I do.
I will say one thing though, and you know, don't get me wrong, DC, Baltimore, Philly. I'm from Philly. They all have very vibrant local music communities. What really helped us sort of accelerate the process at the beginning was we hit New York over and over again. And
New York.
if you're trying to attract, you know, for better or worse, that's the central location is New York is for booking agents.
And I
lawyers,
have
managers.
performed in New York. I perform in New York like maybe, usually once a month, actually.
That's great.
It's great, but the issue is that the people coming are my friends. Like,
Yeah.
they're places that
Right.
don't have, you know, their own draw, so it's just,
What's your draw? How many people do you bring?
in New York,
5, 10,
Yeah,
15?
and also, where do you
about-
play in New York?
little places,
Pianos.
little hole-in-the-wall places, yeah.
Because there's a great place for singer-songwriters called the Living Room that, you know, that's
Yeah, I've
that's
heard of
really
that. I have some
a
friends
center of like. It is. What?
Really? I was just
It's
there
closed
10 days
tonight.
ago.
Well,
Wow.
you're beat.
I was just going to add, I was an intern for a local club
Wow.
in Birmingham called Doomtree Cafe. And what we did is we would online content. So, you know, it's actually a really great club. People would send in stuff and we'd listen to it online. And me personally, especially being from there, we judged a lot of people on that online content. And if it wasn't up to par or whatever, we were like, not really, not going to open up for anybody, you know, one of the major acts that are coming through potentially.
There are always underground networks also going on in a lot of these places. In New York, I still play a fair amount of secret shows. But I think the answer to your question is consistency. Number one, I've played shows where there's been only one person. The Bowery Poetry Club once, I played a show, one person was my friend who asked to be put on the guest list. I mean, so
We've all been there.
and what are you going to do, you know? She was a poet. What are you going to do? You're going to say no? No, of course I'll put you on the guest. But consistency, and also what everyone's saying here, really, it can still be good and still be shameless self-promotion. Constant. I used to carry around cards. See, I still do that. Just carry stuff around because you never know who you're going to run into.
I say that, you know, because I meet a lot of musicians and a lot of musicians want to get their music to me, and it's really super, super helpful when I meet a musician and they say, here's a card, you can download a song, but choose the song, you know, choose, like, I get overwhelmed myself when someone gives me even a CD. I had one guy give me 6 of his CDs. You know, what do you do with that? So it's really helpful for people like myself on the receiving end who are going to consider talent and consider doing something with the talent to have what the artist thinks is the most focused, the one thing that will knock it out of the park. It's not necessarily going to be the most personal, touching song just to you, but it's the one that every time you play, you see in the audience something happens. And that's what you want to get in the hands of people like me and the people who are running the clubs and the websites that you look at.
Yeah.
You really want to focus.
And one more thing, I mean, that just reminded me, like, if you, you know, there are other musicians coming through town, I always take CDs, and if I like it, I'll pass it along to my booking agent or my manager or whatever, you know. So
Yeah, like
that's
don't be afraid to give your stuff.
Yeah, that's a
to
fun,
people.
that's
Like
fun.
that's a fun game we play in the van. Is we'll get a band CD, and we'll play it on the way. And sometimes it's okay, and then sometimes it's real fun.
Do you use the term floaters?
It's real fun.
It's so good.
And I would also say, just don't be afraid to think outside of the box. That's one of the most exciting things about right now, I feel like, as a musician. Like, you can really think outside of booking and venues in different ways because you have access to tools that musicians before have never had access to.
I think your career is all set.
Yeah.
We took care of you. Thank you for the question.
Thanks. Hi. My name's Dick Huey. I have a small social media grassroots marketing company that's based in New York called Toolshed. And I'm interested in what Matana said and wondering if you would dig in a little bit deeper on what you said about social media, because we're often hired by artists who take too focused approach to their social media. They're too much focused on, for instance, just their music. And you know, my own thinking about social media is that it's very much about, it's less about what you're talking about than in trying to make a connection so that you can have access to that person and have a relationship with that person. And I feel like if all you focus on is the music that you're talking about, I'd be curious for other opinions on this as well. If all you focus on is the music, you don't show enough of yourself for people to understand what you're about. And the last thing I would say about that is, if you think of, you may not like to think of yourself as a brand, for instance, but if you think of a brand like Patagonia, you understand what that brand is about because they share more of themselves than just the fact that they're a clothing company. So how do you, can you clarify a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, you know,
thinking?
there's a certain amount of business acumen that you must have in order to do this, whether pre-social media or now. That's important. And so in terms of putting your message out there, if that's what you wish to do with your work, I know some artists who are very against ideas of message work, right? But for me and what I do, it's what I do. So I was a zinester for 10 years. I put out a zine under a lot of different names, and I've used social media as a way to kind of go back into that tradition. And one of the musicians that actually got me back on social media, because I quit Facebook like 12 times, right? Okay, I did. There's now a fan page. I don't have a personal page anymore, but one musician, Vijay Iyer, the pianist, said to me when I quit Twitter for like the 10th time, he said, no, you can use these tools to infect people with ideas that mean a lot to you about the work that you build.
And especially if you're doing political messaging, if there's things you believe in, that is just such a great way to connect with people and like-minded people. And it's so often when an artist has a feeling and an expression about something that someone resonates with, so will their music, so will their art. And I think that's sort of what you're saying.
But you have
is
to
that
be careful.
It is sort of what I'm saying.
I guess
Well,
I just feel you have to be careful. I do, because I've been through so many different. I was so excited the day I quit MySpace, right? You know, like, and then I just joined MySpace again the other day. I mean, it's after almost 10 years. Wow. I think it's important also to get the message of creativity out to other artists, that it's not just about these other extra things about you. It really is. The core is about the work, right? There are artists, in my tradition at least, where, you know, you have to listen to what the work is saying, because sometimes the work is actually not as representative as the artist, as what they may say about themselves. So I just feel like
that's
for different
for someone else to
people-
judge, right? I mean, that's sort of
I've been through so many things with it now. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think it's up to each artist to find their own balance. I found my own balance in kind of using my style of zine writing that I enjoy and sharing with people. The hard thing about it, though, is the back and forth that starts to happen. Sometimes that's really cool, right? But sometimes it's really exhausting. Or like I had a post where I saw Godspeed You Black Emperor and 9 Inch Nails, right? I'm not a huge 9 Inch Nails fan. And so I posted, oh, I saw 9 Inch Nails. You know why this has bothered me. And people were writing like, why would that bother you? Like, oh, right. You know, you say too much, people say too much back to you.
I would say to you, and you know, you feel the way you feel, but I would say to you, that's good. Not everything your fans or anyone has to agree with you. It's engaging, and
but some people get really angry and vicious, though, and that's a whole other.
That's because it's easy to be. It doesn't last more than 8 seconds in their brain. You know, it's not real anger. It just comes out that way. And
I guess so, but it puts an imprint on your person.
So anyway,
yeah,
I hear you. I hear you.
Fair enough. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Is that good? Yeah. Thanks. Go. I guess. Hey, Mr. Curry.
Yeah. So that's the question of the day for me. Do you guys like curry?
Yes. Oh yeah.
I'll get you some.
Love. Oh,
that was the question. We got the answer. 5 curries coming up.
All right.
Thank you. Tell us your name and why. I mean, just
please.
Plug yourself for a minute, for goodness sake.
Oh, okay. So my name's Graham Smith White. I'm a musician, and I write music inspired by nature, and I've got solar-powered recording equipment, so I can literally go anywhere and cut a record.
Awesome.
And I do. That's what I do. Awesome. It's called the Sunrise Review. Solarpoweredmusic.com.
Awesome. Thanks.
That's great.
That's awesome.
See?
Hi. So, you know, any of you guys can answer this, but I'm going to direct it at Dessa. Could you just speak more to the importance and the struggles of a music collective like Doomtree in an age where the idea of big labels is sort of becoming an antiquated notion?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've come to really love the indie lifestyle, but, you know, I started hoping I would get signed, which I think is probably true for a lot of people. Maybe less so now, but I started certainly. I remember the first time we got a call from an imprint on a major, it was like, you know, we all didn't even have cell phones. It was like, where's Kyle? Kyle's skateboarding. So we all hit all the coffee shops on the route that Kyle usually skateboards, you know, to find Kyle and bring him back to the house where we could press play on the answering machine that we had been pressing play on all afternoon. And Laserbeak, who now runs Doomtree Records, was like, should I quit my job? And we were like, oh, wait, like 2 days. So I don't want to be too high-minded about it, you know, because like a lot of people, I became indie because I wasn't sure how to not be indie. And then 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 years later, I guess in some ways I'm really glad that my first CD wasn't the one that people are listening to, because I don't think I would have had the shot to make a second CD. It was not that tight. And as I mentioned before, I really dig the idea of being able to have artistic control. Is it tough with 7 people? Absolutely. It was really tough, I think, 5 years in. A lot of like dropout fights, you know, lots of bottles of booze and tears being passed around in hotel rooms trying to figure out how to make this thing go. I think if you make it 5 years, it's not too hard to make it to 10, but man, those first 5 are a doozy. So that'd be my experience anyway.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
What is your perspective, I guess, on my end, when I have young artists come to me, I'm an attorney, and they come to me looking for services, and right now, the major thing they've been coming to is, they're creating these, I guess, brands And I can't necessarily tell you if it made sense, like you were saying, to piggyback off the earlier answer, if it makes sense, if it matches with their message or not, but they're trying to create these brands, they create these logos, and they use that to kind of push a movement and get kids into it, the stickers and everything like that, kind of like what DJs have done, and then try and use that to push their music forward or sell ticket sales for shows and things like that. I mean, you know, how do you feel about that? And to me, it kind of completely, it almost makes it like, well, the music could be whatever. It's not really, who cares about the music so much as, you know, creating this image of what it is, you know, artistically.
I like the DIY aspect of it always. Yeah. I think we all, there's the DIY aspect, like coming out of from some of my favorite punk bands or something. Like, we all kind of come from that, and I think it's good. But I think also a lot of younger bands are kind of getting the impression from watching really popular pop acts actually talk about their brands. Like, I've listened to like all sorts of really popular artists talk about branding in interviews, and it's like, okay, so that's kind of where it's coming from. But I still think it's good.
Yeah, I think the unfortunate thing is that we're talking about that we're talking about creating brands at all like that we even talk about. I mean, you know, I mean, in the past, you think about, let's say, you think about Tom Waits or somebody like that, you know, and for me, I have a clear vision of what and it's also, you know, it's like this mystical kind of like guru, you know, like, I don't know, you know, it's like, you know, you think of Dr. John, whatever. You think of something pops into your head when you think of Public Enemy. None of them were like, well, how do I shape this? It's them, you know. This is
like the Rolling Stones.
This is what they're doing. Yeah, I don't think they.
But you're thinking about Tom Waits because Tom Waits happened to have a record label sign him. You know what I mean? He's in your life because something big put him in front of an awful lot of people, and I think.
How do I brand myself to make?
Right, but I empathize with the dilemma because in the days that I grew up, you know, there was not, first of all, there weren't that many bands. You know, the AM radio had a handful of songs. You probably could buy 13 good albums in a year. You know, there just wasn't that much. What comes out in one day was much more than will come out in a whole year, and you know, in like 1965 or 1970 or 75. And we had, the generation I'm part of, had an aesthetic that you didn't ever want to attach commercialism. That was the whole point of rock and roll. Right. It was rebellion. It was just the opposite of that. And it always just turned my stomach when you saw bands associating with food or cars or you name it. But I really do, having talked to so many musicians over the years and seen the transition, empathize with that notion of I need to do something to get my stuff out there. Because once it's out there, I believe in my stuff, I need to get it out there. And so there's that push-pull, push-pull. TV shows have been really good to a lot of bands, right? Movies, really good to a lot of bands. In the old days, that would have been really bad, you know? So
I think I might have misinterpreted. Are you talking about the artists becoming like...
Maybe I'm...
I was thinking logos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean that's definitely an element. That's why they come to me. Is that they're thinking, okay, I want to protect this, but not only do I want to protect this, but I want to be able to put it out in the forefront. And it's almost like using that and creating a movement behind that. What it means, like I can give an example. There's a very popular artist in Philly named Chill Moody. And him and his crew have this thing called Nice Things. And it's this green smiley face, and the smile says nice things. And you see it everywhere. And everything is nice things, nice things, nice things. And I'll tell you, it's funny because half of the young fan community is like, I don't even know what that means. And the other half is like, who cares? Nice things. And they just, show up. He sells out some of the bigger venues in Philly and stuff just 'cause. And so, I mean, clearly it's effective for him, as an example. But then there are other artists that I feel like it's so focused on that, on kind of like making themselves famous so they can then sell their music. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, that's just gross. Yeah. I mean, it's been done since the beginning of time, I think, I think as long as, it's just a matter of opinion on what you think is good and what you think is bad. You know, bands since the beginning of time have been putting their kind of personal pop cycles and the things that they believe in into the image of what they're putting out there, you know, themselves. And as long as it's good and it's true, I think that's good. But I think, you know, people that are more concerned of how can I get famous, you know, if that's just a fame thing. I don't really think that has anything to do with music.
I think I'd be kind of guilty of it. I mean, I hear what you're saying, Nicole, but then on the other hand, I'm just like, well, there are people I would say everybody in this room probably has no idea about the music I make. I'm sitting here hoping that someone might at some point Google me.
Yeah, but
Do you know what I
think
mean?
that you would, you know, but you wouldn't be like, okay, like something you're totally not into, attach yourself into something
Agreed.
you're not into just to be famous.
And you'd be totally douchey.
Yeah, you'd be totally douchey.
Yeah, but I feel like I don't know. My click sticker's hard, so I feel like even if they sell out once, like if Nice Things sucks, they're not gonna go back. Cause like that's that sticker dude. His show is below. I love that sticker dude. You know?
So we have 3 more. We're just going to take 3 more questions, and we're going to do them fast because we're like, and yeah, thank you so much. If we can do this real quickly, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, first of all, Dessa, I saw you, I think, like 6 years ago at Bottom of the Hill in San Francisco, POS, I think.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. My name's Angelica, and I was just wondering if you guys, coming from such different backgrounds and genres, and all being around for 5, 10 plus years, if the releases that you guys have released, if that format and means that you've released has changed, and if you guys, and how that's changed, and as far as like, have you guys done any free streaming, free downloads?
Yeah, I'm excited that vinyl is back. I'm so excited about that. I booked, my last 2 records are on CD, also available with stream, but it's also out on vinyl. And it's interesting how we've had to kind of package that in a way that makes it interesting to people who may not yet own a record player but might want to. It's kind of cool. Or seeing people get back into tape, that's kind of weird, but it's kind of great. Yeah. You know, it's like, right. You know, that's more merch for us to carry around, but it's amazing.
Anybody else?
Same thing, vinyl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually seen the quality of my vinyl get better now that I'm independent and get to like pick who makes it. So that's good.
Have any of you guys ever released your music for free? And any like?
We just did on Noise Trade.
Okay.
We had an EP and we just released it, and I mean I think we had like 4,000 or 5,000 downloads within a couple days, and we made a whopping because you can donate. I think we made a whopping $100. So.
Did you find that helped with shows, like live shows?
Well, you're about to go out to find that out, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, like I said, we've been touring up to, a little bit. You know, I can't. It's so hard to quantify something like that.
Right.
Yeah. But
thanks.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Hey, what's up, guys? Rashid, producer, writer. Speaking of downloads, streaming royalties versus download royalties. I just want to know you guys' opinion in the sense of I've been reading about artists like Adele doing these window strategies where they're not, you know, Adele isn't giving her stuff to like Spotify and all the digital services. They're exhausting all of their download money on like iTunes, and then once, you know, it looks like the downloads are kind of going down, then they'll put their stuff on Spotify and get those pennies. So I just wanted to know, do you guys kind of do the same thing on the indie side as well, or just what is your overall opinion of the digital services and their royalty rates?
Yes, windowing is the move, at least in my opinion.
What time period is this? Did everybody understand what that is? Yeah, I think you explained it clearly. What time frame do you?
I mean, you can either pick your time frame by doing like a couple months after, a couple weeks after even. I mean, if you have the ability to just watch in real time, like, okay, people were super stoked, then they were a little bit less stoked. Now my downloads have stopped, you know, or they've really seemed to kind of plateau at a lower level. Boom, then you press the button on Spotify, Pandora, RDO, and all those.
Thanks. Yeah, good question. We have one more. Thank you.
My name's John Webster. I run the Music Managers Forum in London, and we set up this thing called the Featured Artists Coalition 5 years ago, which has been a very interesting ride. I just really want to say thank you to the FMC. This has been 2 fantastic days. It's really interesting to see this panel is exactly the same as all the things we get in the UK, but what the same issues for artists and that. And I think it's been very constructive, but the things the FMC do about research and things like that are incredibly valuable. There's a sign above my desk for when people ring up and it says, there are no rules anymore. And there really are no rules anymore.
No.
You can choose whatever you want to do as an artist in any way you like, in any country in the world where you can find your market, which is the fantastic thing about the World Wide Web. You don't have to tweet. You don't have to be on Facebook. You have to do what you want to do and what's right for you and to make your career. So I'm going back to London, continuing to realise that there's loads of people out there who want to help artists. And I think the only thing, we run a course for managers and artists, an induction day. And we always get asked the same question right at the end. What's the bit of advice you want to give to people? And the answer is always the same. Don't be shit. in whatever you do.
That's a good way to end.
In your music, in your social media, in how you put records out, in your everything. Because if you're not shit, you'll succeed in the end. And I just want to thank everyone for
Remember that.
It's been a great 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, FMC. Michael, you want to? Thank you.
That was a good ending. God, that should be the motto for the summit. Yeah, FMC 14. I think Paul forgot to mention the name of your band.
Oh my God.
Saint Paul and the Broken Bones is the name of my band.
And you're playing tonight at?
Iota Club in Arlington.
That's right. So
Everyone be there.
So I just want to quickly, just on behalf of FMC and our staff and our board, I want to thank everybody for coming again this year. I want to thank all of you who watched online via webcast. Huge thank you to Georgetown University. We couldn't do this without their partnership. Huge thank you to our event sponsors. We literally couldn't do it without your help and helping support the effort. It's been a really exciting and I think kind of reinvigorating couple of days. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Please fill out your evaluations. We take them very seriously. You'll get it online if you don't pick up a written one here. Come party with us tonight. Go see Paul this evening after that, and we will see you soon. Thanks.
Thank you.